they can get that group in here that brings continuity to this new Ben Johnson offense, things can happen a lot quicker.
Tom, how are you?
Jay Hood, I'm good. How you doing, Dionne?
Good morning,
good to
Tom.
talk to you guys.
Great to talk to you as well.
All smiles, Tom Thayer, because so far so good as far as the offseason is concerned. I said this many times already this week, but I'll tell you, it makes me feel good as a fan that I'm not so so deep in the weeds that I don't know what's going on with this Bears team. And Ryan Poles agrees, I think, with all of us. It says, hey, you need to upgrade your offensive line. You need to have defensive linemen. So I don't feel crazy. He saw what we all saw, that there need to be upgrades.
Oh, 100%. And I think he took Ben Johnson, what Ben Johnson thought was needed the most in order to get this team in a position to win games. And the transformation of the offensive line in Detroit throughout Ben's time, it's evidence of what is needed and what the most important part of a football team is when you talk about offense and defensive line. And so I'm glad that Ryan Poles went out there and found some guys that could come in and be immediate alpha males and starters on this offensive line and kind of transform the interior from what they went through and all the shuffling bodies they went through the last couple of years to hopefully three guys that can come in, stay healthy, and play at a really, really high all-pro type of level.
Beyond what they do on the field, how valuable is just the experience, especially for a Joe Thuney who's won everywhere he's been, just to bring that into a locker room that hasn't enjoyed that kind of success for a long time?
It's funny because when you watch the press conferences yesterday of Thuney and Jackson, and then you watch the press conference of Grady Jarrett, there's definitely three different personalities there. And you can see the offensive linemen, they come in here and you're going to lead by example. You're going to lead by work ethic. You're going to lead by showing examples of the way you should go about practice inside the meetings and understand all of your assignments. And I think there's a good example of what offensive linemen are all about, is because I've always said, if you win the game, you're not going to get any credit. If you lose the game, you're going to get all the blame. And that's kind of the way offensive linemen live their entire career. And then you get Grady Jarrett up there, who I just love his energy. I've always loved him as a player. He's a guy that has a lot of fire, man. He's got a lot of anticipation, a lot of quickness. He can put offensive linemen in negative positions immediately. So from what I saw yesterday up at the podiums, I was really encouraged about what they can mean to the immediate future of this team. It's not like a draft choice and you hope he kind of falls in the line. These are guys that the day you give them your jersey, they're going to be first in line at their position.
Tom, I think that in the evaluation process, if you are an NFL team and you look in the draft, you say, well, what program did he come from? Who's his coach? And so you want to know that background. And this iteration of the Chicago Bears, I was telling Dionne earlier, I said, it does matter that Joe Thuney's on this football team. It does matter that Jonah Jackson's on the team, but I also look at where they came from. Thuney came from Kansas City. Jonah Jackson came from the Rams. I like that. You got a couple of Atlanta Falcons on here. So from winning programs, I think that matters too in the evaluation, does it not?
Oh, I agree 100%. The reason Kansas City went out and got Thuney from New England Patriots because they knew that he had a really upside to where he was going to go with his career. And I think Joe Thuney is a left guard. It's not something that we're going to be in a contingency plan here where if things don't work out, maybe we can move him out to left tackle. I really don't think that's what you want to do right now in this stage of his career. And so, Jackson, Thuney, and Dahlman, all these guys know what it takes to live the NFL life. They know how to be prepared from OTAs that carry all the way through Game 17. And if you can get these guys to have a long, healthy 17-game career, you think what it's going to do for Caleb and the rest of the offense. And then you plug in Darnell Wright at right, and you figure out who's going to play left tackle for you. Maybe he's still out there in the draft. And you have guys like Jackson and Thuney that can expedite the learning curve of the offensive tackles they're going to play next to. They can make sure that, look, you can count on me if you need some help on the inside against a difficult pass rusher, or when we're working the run game, this is how we go about combination blocks. And when you can speed up that learning curve by talking through examples of what you've already lived through, it helps these guys get on page a lot quicker and then get that continuity, that word that 1,000 times in the last couple of years about the offensive line. If they can get that group in here that brings continuity to this new Ben Johnson offense, things can happen a lot quicker.
On the defensive side, obviously Grady Jarrett brings so much energy and so much experience, but also the addition of Dayo Odengbo. I'm going to get that down here quick. What are you seeing improvement-wise from what they've done defensively this week?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how they determine the snaps between Grady Jarrett, Andrew Billings, Gervon Dexter Sr., and are they all interchangeable, or are they have a defined position? Is Billings a first down defensive tackle, and now Grady, if they go to a second long or third and long, is he primary that next defensive tackle that comes in here because he has so much burst and so much offensive line concerned about his pass rushing ability? And then you think about Dayo, he's got that exterior template. He's got the long frame, the big body. If he can play, all three downs equally as well, and they can get the opponent into those second and third and long situations, then you talk about Montez Sweat. You hope Austin Booker takes that next step forward. And then you have a couple pass rushers out there. Daniel Hardy went and had a good preseason last year when he was in there. So you never know where his career is going. So it's not only up to Dayo and Grady to come in here and change this defensive line. They're going to have to be contributors because, you have that rotation of defensive linemen that are going to factor in. And I think it was last year, it was Booker, Chris Williams, and DeMarcus Walker. Those are the only three guys that played all 17 games. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at how many bodies you really need to run an efficient and effective and a fresh defensive line, everybody's going to have a hand in what Dennis Allen wants to do with this defense.
I wonder how much rope do some of these players have from the Eberflus era, though, Tom, because even though I like what the Bears have done, I still think there needs to be, as you've mentioned, more depth on that defense. Like for a guy like Dominic Robinson that had like one or two splash games, for a Zach Pickens who's on the back end of this depth chart, I mean, there's a number of guys that got to prove a lot to this new coaching staff. I wonder how much rope do they have to be able to stay and stick with this team.
Sam J. Hood, you are correct, man, and that's one of the paranoias of getting a new coach hired into your building is because you are definitely on high alert. If all of a sudden you think that you can kind of shuffle your way through practices, and all of a sudden now you've got position coaches that are trying to make a determination of who best fits on your roster, you better come out here and have high energy every day that you're in pads. When you're in no padded practices, there's definitely less that you can do physically. But when you're in the meeting rooms and you get a question asked to you, you better be able to answer it immediately. If you're on the practice field and you're starting to install new information on the defensive side of the ball, you better know exactly where to line up, what your job is, what your requirement is per snap down and distance. And all those things are being evaluated every single day because no coach walking into this building owes anybody any favors. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about that, Jay Hood, high alert from the moment you get there, I think is best advice.
So Ryan Poles said that the moves that they've made this week leaves their draft board wide open. What would you like to see them do, or what does any of this indicate to you what direction they may go at 10? My priority has always been the offensive line still. And I think if you go out there and you think that there's that left tackle that's going to line up there next to, fortunately next to Tooney this upcoming year, in having that element of experience right next to him and kind of speed up his learning process. If that guy is there, then I still have my sights set on that position specifically. And then when you look down the draft and you think of the number of defensive linemen that are in this draft, both on the inside and the outside, I'm not going to ignore that position as well. And, Jay Hood brought up the competitiveness of some of these guys that are, they're seeing what their career can pan out to.
And I also need to have to look at the safety position because with all due respect to Jaquan Brisker, and I think he's one of the best safeties when he plays in the league. He's got a, if he stays healthy, he's got a really bright future. But I also have to be concerned for the depth of that position, not only how they can earn their stripes and earn some reps, but also how can they contribute to a coach Hightower's special teams immediately and be one of those core group of guys. And so offensive line and safety are two positions that I would be looking at.
Tom, are you sure that this Bears team is ready for Aaron Rodgers and the Minnesota Vikings this year?
Oh, man. I guess they are. Listen, he's 43 years old. If you can't provide some type of pass pressure that makes him put him in a retreat position or try to use his escapability to find an open receiver, even though Minnesota's got three of the best when you're talking about tight end and the two wide receivers, and they recently signed Aaron Jones. Yeah, we've seen it before with Brett Favre, and, that didn't end well for Brett Favre and Corey, who sacked him on his last play.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating that as the musical chairs and the music stops, that Aaron Rodgers, there's other jobs out there. There's the Giants, Cleveland, there's other. But I'm thinking that, to increase his chances to win, he should probably go to the Vikings. And I just think that that's hilarious that he would follow the same path of Brett Favre and be with the Vikings.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Too, is I would like to have a better understanding of what J.J. McCarthy's injury was and why is it taking him so long to come back. Because I thought last year, maybe he just tweaked his knee, and that's probably the best thing that can happen to him as a rookie, to be able to get over this injury, then not be forced to go in there and play. And then Darnold did what he did, and J.J. McCarthy was just waiting in the wings. But now it seems like there's an undetermined opinion of what his injury is and why or how long is it really taking for him to be back on the field.
I think that is a big question. And by the way, there's nobody else in that depth chart. It's just McCarthy and nobody else. They don't even have any backups yet. I just wanted to bring that up because it's been in the ether this week about, what's the NFC North look like with the Bears making these upgrades? And I would just say, there's factors like Ben Johnson is a first-time head coach with his first-time staff. There's new players. They all have to gel. What does Caleb Williams look like? Would yet another ear, another voice in his ear? So there's a lot of determining factors, but I just liked, Dionne, the upgrades that they've made because you had to. It's for the protection of Caleb Williams, but also something that we haven't talked enough about is the running game.
Right.
Like people are down on Swift, but I think that with a better offensive line, he should be able to get in there and be a much better running back for the Chicago Bears. And the same thing with Roschon Johnson, be able to give a little thunder and lightning. I'm not going to give up on those two because with a better offensive line, Tom, maybe they'll run the football better.
100%. Another element to that is having Cole Kmet more regularly targeted. And when you look at what Cole Kmet can offer in offense and the distance of his pass completion, it does open up the running game. Because if you have a solid running game and then now you introduce play-action passing, and then that's going to open up tight end and receiver. So I think there's a lot of significant growth processes in this offense. If you protect Caleb better, you have a more effective running game, you introduce more targets to Cole Kmet, and that's going to open up opportunities downfield for DJ, and hopefully Rome Odunze takes that next step.
Now, there's no question upgrading the interior of the offensive line changes the view of everything offensively. And I'm excited to see what Ben Johnson dials up for Caleb Williams in a Caleb Williams-centric offensive system that he plans to implement. And to hear Jonah Jackson call him a wizard, that's okay, show us. I can't wait to see.
You're talking about Ben Johnson working two different quarterbacks. When you think about Jared Goff, he doesn't have the athleticism of Caleb, but he's got the experience that Caleb doesn't. I think when one thing for an offensive line, when you have a significant incorporation of play-action passing, you can be a more aggressive offensive line. You can have protections that are more into your favor. And I do think that will help the identification of where the ball has to go with more immediacy. And so, play hand in hand. Get your offensive line to complement your quarterback, and then your quarterback to complement the offense.
Tom, as always, we appreciate the time. Looking forward to you and Jeff later on with Bears Weekly after the Sox and Brewers. So we appreciate the time.
Thanks, Tom.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. See you guys.
See ya.
Tom Thayer with us on the Yingling Hotline.
Love it. Love Tom.
So do I. And I think he is as optimistic as many of us as far as the moves that have been made.
I appreciate, though, that he was realistic about the draft and saying,
right.
no, this is still where we need to get help.
Yep.
Because he's right.
Yep.
He's right.
When you build, by the way, when you build the house, it's awesome when you build the house. But what about the paint? What about the aesthetics around it? What about the flowers you want to have? Garden in the back?
The basement to hold it all up.
Basement, yes.
Foundation, please.
Fence around it? Nice
Feels
fence?
like a luxury item until the foundation is there.
What about the fence? You got to have the fence, don't you?
Eventually.
Yes. All those things you need to be able to build a house that you want. And the Bears have, again, nice curb appeal. But what about the rest of it?
Well, they have a good plan. Hopefully they have a good contractor. That's all.
Yes. Have a good
Who works
contractor.
quickly.
Yes. That's
And,
good.
I mean, these are not hard things to ask for.
By the way, you know who's coming up at 9:35? We've got Danny Zetterman will come in to give us the selections for
right.
spring trading.
That's right.
That's at 9:35. So Danny will be in, and we will find out who will be the combinations for next Tuesday's spring trading. That's still to come. Cap and Jay Hood, weekday mornings.